What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today, we're going to be talking about whether or not Epic 7 is a free-to-play friendly game, especially with the bunch of collabs that we just got, the limited units, as well as a lot of new players joining because of them, and from mid-game to even late-game players, what you can expect moving forward, what you're missing out, and can you stay competitive. Then we'll break that down as first we'll define the gacha and what it means to be free-to-play friendly and what some of those fixations are. Then we will actually go into specifics into Epic 7. What do whales get that free-to-play players don't? What do they have that's in common? And then at the end of the day, is this enough to make it Epic 7 a free-to-play friendly game? And again, you can whether agree or disagree with my opinion. And if you do, we can have a chat down in the comments. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions as well. But if you like the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and use your server. Link down in the description. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So first, defining what a free-to-play friendly gacha game looks like. Well, what's a gacha game, right? I know this is, for a lot of people, this is obvious, but for a lot of you guys that are watching, this may not be your first gacha game. Essentially, gacha games are where you are able to get characters with premium currency. You're able to build them up, you're able to use them in either PvE content, progress through the game, and eventually, if it's past PvP, be able to be competitive in PvP to get more rewards, get more heroes, and have fun building, optimizing, community building, and all that good stuff, right? There's a lot of gachas in the industry. There's things like Fate Grand Order. There's things like Genshin Impact. There's things like Cookie Run Kingdom, right? There's several gacha games out there in the market, but at the end of the day, they all boil down to getting units, getting them built up, and advancing through content and being competitive in PvP if it has PvP. But why would a game need to be free-to-play friendly, and why does it matter, right? Well, a game needs to be free-to-play friendly because at the end of the day, a wide majority of the people that are playing these games are not going to want to spend on the game. And if the game is not free-to-play friendly, that means that a lot of people will leave and the game will lose popularity and eventually die out, and that's the way a lot of gachas die. On the other hand, the company has to balance this with their business interest, where they also at the end of the day have to make money, right? You can't give them everything, because if you just give them everything, there's no way for you to make money, right? So you have to balance it to a point where you can get either some advantages or some cool stuff as a pay-to-pay player, but you have to make it in not too much where a free-to-play player cannot catch up at a decent timeline, right? So that's going to be what they have to balance and why it's important to make a free-to-play friendly game. So with that we know that, Epic 7, where do we start, right? So for a game to be free-to-play friendly, you have to make sure that with decent amount of time, you're able to get to that goal, right? And that time can vary depending from game to game and person to person. Some games, late game is something that you don't start thinking about until 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, and that can vary widely. Epic 7 is a game that if you're playing consistently in 6 months, you can expect to be competitive and pretty much be able to do a majority of the things that all players can do, even play-to-play players, right? In 6 months, as long as you're playing, you'll be able to get that, right? It could be less, it could be more, right? People have different things, but as long as you're having fun, right? So now we got that out of the way, let's actually look about what the advantage Epic 7 does to actually be able to make money. And all the stuff that Epic 7 has is going to be things that help in progression, right? If we look at the shop, the biggest things is going to be summons and progression. And that entails two different things. For the progression, that just makes it so you can build units faster. The biggest way it does this is with things like Molagora. It's with things like artifact packs, gold, powders of knowledge. And it's even with things like leaf packs that allow you to do more runs and try to get more good gear. At the end of the day, the gear is still RNG. But there's no way to get like premium currency that's going to give you like a completely unfair advantage, like a costume that you have to spend money on to be able to get stats, which a lot of games actually do have. So that's the first part of it. The other part is the crystals to actually summon. The big things with this is that they have more flexibility on the units they want to summon, right? They're able to get all the units realistically because they can spend on it. And Epic 7 is really generous with the pity. And we'll talk about that for the free-to-play section. But the big one's going to be the ML heroes. Realistically, a whale can actually get more pities quicker for these ML hero, these premier heroes, right? Which a lot of times are very strong heroes. So they do get that slight advantage. The other advantage they get is through the form of imprints, because typically a free-to-play player, it's going to take them a very long time to get imprints for a unit. And if you don't know what imprints are, basically they let you get stats, a little bit of stats for free if you pull duplicate units. This is very common in gacha games, and essentially it does let you get extra stats for your units. Now this is something that free-to-play players can get and will get over time, but a pay-to-play player can get all of their units up to SSS if they decide to spend the amount for that unit, right? Which does give 18% attack, and at the end of the day, it's equivalent to 2 to 3 rolls on a gear set, right? Which can make a difference, right? Higher up, but it's not blatant enough that it's gonna be like, oh yeah, you can't compete because everyone has it. Not everyone's a whale, right? And it does, and we'll talk about that later, whether or not it's free to play. But that's just the facts. That's just the advantages that pay to play players get. On the other hand, what are things that are free to play friendly? Well, pity's actually not too bad, right? Even though a pay to play player can pity all the units, 120 summons, you're able to pity a premier hero every 6 to 8 weeks, right? About. More, depending on the week, depending on the events, it could be either quicker, but it will never be slower, right? In less than 8 weeks, you should be getting pity as long as you're actually playing the game. If you're not playing the game, it might take a little bit longer, but if you're playing the game consistently, you will get a lot of summons and you will be able to pity a lot of units, and you won't always go to pity. The rates are actually not the worst on the planet. It's a 1% chance to get the unit, which, while may seem pretty low, it's pretty decent when you compare it to other gachas in the industry, such as like Genshin Impact, right? And even Cookie Run Kingdom, right? So it's decent, right? You definitely can get pity almost a unit every month, and they release units about once every 4-5-ish weeks. They'll release another unit, so you can almost pity every single unit once you get a good influx. Now, the exception to this is limited units, which is why people recommend you always save for limited heroes and don't just blow it on all the gacha characters, because they're not all good, right? Not all the banners are things you have to summon on. So that part, yes, you do have to have management, but again, it's not something that's blatant that, oh yes, I can never get the unit that I want. The only place where it really matters is Mystic, because this one is about 3 months plus to get pity, which can take a lot longer, but you don't need it to do most of the important things in the game, and that's going to be what we're going to be talking about in the next section. But with that, as far as free-to-play players, the other thing that's really nice is at the end of the day, there is a pack that gives gear, but it's not guaranteed to be good. At the end of the day, if you farm every day, Epic 7 also gives you ample energy to actually get gear on your units, to actually eventually be able to get the gear on the units, right? So you will be getting gear. There's nothing else besides that. It's just a progression thing. It's just going to take a little bit longer time. So now the question becomes, how long, King Blair? Because that's really the part that makes a game free-to-play friendly. If I'm saying it's going to take over a year for you to be even competitive in PvE and PvP, you're going to quit the game. And that, I would completely say, yeah, I understand that 100%, because that's not free-to-play friendly. So in Epic 7, what's the end goals, right? So if we look at the end goals, there's PvP and PvE. As far as PvE goes, there is no content in PvP that you can't clear with almost all free-to-play heroes, right? You can almost essentially clear all PvE content, if not all, right? Abyss might be the only fringe scenario where you might need other units, but there are people out there that clear with full free-to-play heroes, right? But having units in Abyss does definitely help. That's the only place that you can't clear with almost free-to-play completely heroes, right? Where it matters. You can clear every other aspect of PvP. You can clear the hunts, the raids, the tower. You can farm. You can get far in adventure. You can do good in hunt. Good, pretty far in Abyss as well. Almost all free to play or with like decent time, right? And it feels very natural progression in the game where you work on thing for 1 month, you work on another thing for 2 months, you work on another thing for 3 months. By the time you get to month 3 or 4, you will almost be done with the big portion of the PvE content, with only the harder Abyss content left, right? And that's pretty standard. That's pretty nice, right? You can clear almost all PvE content in Epic 7 in a pretty realistic timeline, right? And it's something that they definitely help you a lot with the adventure quest at the beginning, that they help you transition into that very, very, very smoothly. Things like this, like the side story, are going to be a little bit harder for you to actually clear. But again, you have to have end game because you have to have something you're working towards, right? So that part, really, really nice. For me, for most players, in less than 3, like in about 6 months, you'll be able to definitely clear all the harder content if you actually are working just for PvE. But now that leaves us with PvP content. And PvP, again, you're not gonna, it's a little bit harder and it's a little bit dicier, but it is very realistic for a free-to-play player to reach champion, which essentially is a really high rank, and the rewards you're getting are like ridiculously good. It is very realistic for a free-to-play player to reach this again in less than 6 months, right? It is very, very realistic. They've done a lot of work in actually upgrading this, making it easier for you, and that does mean you're going to be getting a lot more resources, right? If we look here, champion is the second to highest tier, and that's where I sit, and I've been playing the game for a very long time. Legend, on the other hand, you're not going to get it, right? It's very unlikely you'll get it until a very, very long time, but that's not the end goal for a lot of people. But I have seen free-to-play players actually reach this level although it does require a little bit more time and a little bit better understanding of the game and hard focusing on this game mode. But it is achievable, right? And I have seen people do it. But for the most part, champion, there's nothing wrong with just being a champion, right? It is very high up, very competitive. You're getting a ton of crystals, and you can get a lot of really good stuff, right? So that's a very good goal to reach, and it's something you can very much do in less than a year, in less than even 6 months in some situations. And that's very nice because, of course, later on you get the option to go higher for legend if that's something you so desire, and the game does allow you to do that. So in that aspect, it does a very good job. And then there's RTA, and this is the one that everyone will say it's a whale playground, that you cannot get this until you've been playing the game for years. Well, we've actually seen people do it in less than 2 months, right? It just matters what you're doing and that you know what you're doing. And of course, that's not going to happen the first time you play this, but you can get the most of the stuff in less than 6 months. You can get the skin, which you get it in Master, in about 6 months. That's amazing. The premium currency for PvP, you can get almost everything as a free-to-play player. That part is really, really great. And the fact that you can do this and the fact they set this bar so low makes it realistic for a free-to-play player to reach the highest reward. So at the end of the day, what does that mean for a free-to-play player? That means even though Epic 7 does have things that pay-to-play players don't have, right? Like pay-to-play players will have more resources. They will have more units. They'll have imprints. They will progress faster to the game. There's a very realistic timeline that you can do to actually reach late game content. You can clear all PvE, you can clear all PvP for the most part in a very realistic content, and everything else that's left after that is completely up to you. If you enjoy the PvP, if you want to try it out, it's completely up to you, and you can enjoy all the gachas and the husbandos and the waifus, and of course, even Guild Wars, you can get there pretty fast as well. Again, because the bar is not set super high, right? You don't have to make it to top 100 in Guild Wars, right? You can just make it into the top, like what? 20%, right? 20% of people can reach this pretty easily, right? And you can, if you're ambitious as a free-to-play player, you can do that in like 3 to 4 months, which is pretty realistic for a lot of gacha games, which is good. It gives you things to work on. So it has a very good curve where you start with PvE, you slowly transition to PvP, and you eventually start getting a good amount of resources. So at the end of the day, what I want to say is Epic 7 is a very free-to-play friendly game. While it does have aspects that are not, and some things can feel extremely frustrating, such as Catalyst, gearing, and not having all the units that you want. At the end of the day, you can be competitive without all the premier heroes. You can actually do a lot of good stuff and have fun with the game. At the end of the day, I definitely think if you're new, definitely give it a shot. You may not be able to get the highest rank on the planet on RTA, but you can definitely reach Masters in a very realistic timeline. There are people that have shown that you can do it in less than 3 months if you really, really focus down on it. But again, you will know kind of if you like it or not as you progress through the game, which again, very nice curve, very good PvE, very great story. But that is going to be all I got for you guys today. If you disagree or agree, let me know in the comments. And that's all I got. I will see you next time. Peace.